Mitten da, heddiw mae blas ces Celtic de Kroeder Kroghen, gan derivado de worth and go pan-Celtic in Iwerddon. Today, Kroeder Kroghen has an inter-Celtic flavour, with reports from the Pan-Celtic Festival, which took place last week in Killarney, Ireland. You may remember back in March that a song by the group Gadja was selected to represent Cornwall in Killarney. So, as one of the group, I set off with my family, together with another Kroeder Kroghen presenter, Julia Allard, who also sings with Gadja, and who wrote the winning song, Avon Avinans, River of Life, which was featured some weeks ago on Kroeder Kroghen. What has the Cornish language slot on Radio Cornwall to do with events in Killarney? Well, quite a lot, I think, as some of today's interviews will show. I'll also be making my own comments and observations as a sort of personal diary. One of the first things which struck us, travelling across South Wales and over through Ireland, were the bilingual road signs and place names. There's been quite a lot of discussion and controversy about this in Cornwall recently, following the hard-fought battle with the Ministry of Transport, which culminated in the Minister's decision eventually to allow some bilingual Cornish-English signs in Cornwall. One of the arguments put up against this originally was that it would confuse motorists. I found no such problem on the unfamiliar roads along which we travelled. Quite the opposite. I thought the signs were very interesting, trying to find Cornish equivalents of some of the places we passed. Incidentally, neither the Welsh nor the Irish seemed to find any problem in using the letters C and K for the same place name, as appropriate, in their bilingual situation. Perhaps something else we can accommodate in Cornish language versions of our Cornish place names. In Ireland, of course, Gaelic is an official language, along with English. All directional signs are bilingual, and the presence of Gaelic is apparent everywhere, even in mainly English-speaking areas. What is the Irish government's language policy? We were extremely fortunate to meet with the Irish government's Minister for the Gaeltacht areas, Donal O'Gallagher. Many of us in Cornwall know little about the Gaeltacht, and so Julia Allard first asked Mr O'Gallagher, Pity steer and randirio you Gelus Genechui Gaeltacht?
Well, along the western coast and some of the south coast and one or two pockets in Cork and south of the country as well, we have areas where Irish is the spoken language of the community. The state, since the inception of the state, has paid special attention to these areas, has tried to, by way of extra allowances and grants, tried to encourage people to use the language, and that's my responsibility as minister. I'm responsible for these areas.
I was going to ask you actually, what do your duties actually entail as Minister for the Gaeltacht?
Well, nearly everything that happens in the area, we've handed some way or other. We've special areas of responsibility for housing. Then we have a development authority called Údaráis na Gaeltachta, where we have 7 elected members, and the minister nominates 6, and they work as a development authority for the area and try to provide jobs for people, because we realise that if we don't have special jobs for these people to remain on, that the Irish would eventually, because of the mass media and contact with the outside world, would have very little chance of surviving. So we give increased grants in housing, for instance. We, by way of encouragement to children attending school, give special grants in our teacher training colleges. 10% of the places for primary teachers are left available for pupils from Gaeltacht areas, and of course that means that we can ensure that when Irish is being taught as a subject in our primary schools, that we can expect to have a higher standard than if we were to just have people from all English-speaking areas.
Despite the success of the Irish Gaelic policy in the Gaeltacht, it should be said that there are critics of the government's policy in education. The language is compulsory for 11 years of schooling, but it's said by some to be too academic and without sufficient emphasis on the spoken word. As Cornish becomes increasingly established in our schools, we need to learn this lesson well. Mr O'Gallagher himself opened the Pan-Celtic Festival. Fatalaith Ganzag and Can Kernewek. How did our Cornish song do? Unfortunately, we failed to win the main competition, but we learned unofficially later on that we ran a very close second. The winning song came from a Welsh group with a very modern style and very loud too, part of a growing trend of pop and rock music in Wales, catering for the new generation of young Welsh speakers and adding a new dimension to the diversity of Celtic music. Here is a brief extract from their song, followed by our intrepid Julia pursuing Heaven Hughes and his group for their feelings on winning, plus an explanation of the words of the song.
Wel, Cyswllen Guinness ag lemon yma gynna fi Heaven News, Dewars Cembry. Heaven, congratulations, well done, and well done to all the group. How do you feel?
Oh, excellent.
Excellent.
Top of the world.
Top of the world. What about the rest of you?
Great.
Great. It's been a great night here tonight.
Yeah.
Yes. And you're pleased with the reception you've had.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And tell me something about the song.
It explains the difficulties and the type of holes and corners that come with people who play around with drugs, and basically telling them not to touch it and well clear.
Like the ruts you get into these days, where people sometimes are alone and they can't get out of it, and they need it's the sort of thing not to get into, you know.
And have you been playing together for long?
Not together as a band as we are now, but we will be playing together after today.
Yeah, I should think you would be as well.
Yeah.
And you write all your songs in Welsh?
Yes.
And how do you equate an evening like this, which is mainly devoted perhaps to traditional music? How do you see your music fitting into this sphere?
I was a bit scared or a bit lost, because it is more, you could say, poppy or modern maybe, for a competition like this one.
So perhaps you think that this proves that there is a place in the modern world for minority languages like our own?
Well, every language and culture have to survive, and to survive you just got to try and beat them, if anything. Beat your competitors.
Well, you've certainly beaten everybody tonight, so thank you very much, and no staff.
We were some tired by the end of that day. Asyn squeezing those now, but we felt we'd done our best. Next day we managed to fit in a little touristic sightseeing, visiting Macross House, set on the shores of Loch Lane, surrounded by mountains, and with its impressive collection of natural history, period furniture, and display of traditional crafts. Then we found out that we were expected to perform again in the evening, in the competition for a traditional song and a new song in Cornish. We had to fit in some last-minute panic practice, as well as hold a Cornish dance workshop in the afternoon. Gorthirwith Otamil Cana Arta. Off to perform again in the evening, then to Courtney's Bar, adopted home of Cornish contingents in the past, for more singing to earn our keep, and finally to the late night session, a Cornish Breton night at another location. We were now tired but feeling extremely welcome, and it was our Cornish language that was the key to the opening of many new doors. Our new friends were clearly impressed that the whole Cornish party, small though it was, were fluent in Cornish, and we were beginning to put over not only what Cornwall is, but in some cases to clarify where Cornwall actually is. As we made our way back to the car in the early morning rain, we were hailed by our ever-informative Gaelic-speaking friend Anne Kennedy waving an envelope. Checking rak cans pins Iwerddonic, a cheque for £100 Irish. To our surprise, we'd won the competition for a new song with Dagro Sech in Africa. Dig Wenner Warren Forth Arta. Friday morning back on the road, this time to the Dingle Peninsula. Nobody could fail to be impressed by the magnificent scenery on a sunny day in May. But with Anne Kennedy as our guide, we were able to glimpse the real life and traditions of this Gaeltacht area. And Holdall Splana, Glasgow and more o Queskel Erben Traith here a melon, heb all tries dain this. Patron a Barco Pedrick Bean of Glan Moor, a Chil Coath, Gwyn ag a Liw, a Sevia Hez and Arvor, hag a Dreif, Lidro Serth and Minizio, as o taken Gwael. What a view. There we went to Radio na Gaeltacht, the all-Gaelic radio station of the area. Anne Kennedy gave an interview about Cornwall in Gaelic and a plug for this year's Loender Perrin, where she is a regular visitor to Cornwall. We recorded a song in Cornish to be played with the interview, and then the radio staff insisted we join them in the local bar for a quick drink. The quick drink lasted a couple of hours, as the singing started again in Cornish and Gaelic. A different culture and lifestyle, we felt we had turned the clock back half a century to an age before television when people made their own entertainment. The tradition of storytelling and music continues for these people, for whom English is very much a second language, often acquired by spending time in the United States. After all, this is the most westerly part of Europe, Ireland's Land's End, but without the commercialisation, and the next parish to the west is in the USA. Julia Allard recorded this conversation with local writer Michael Danin O'Shea, asking him first about family names in Irish.
It's very simple, really. We always take our father's name with us, in case, because there was clans in Ireland ever, and there still clans there, the O'Shea clan, the Fitzgerald clan, the O'Connor clan, and you either take your father's name with you, or we get mixed up with the post. You understand me? And the postman will be going around giving the letters to the wrong people, number one. And another thing is, Mike Denny O'Shea, Sean Jackie, Never Ho is another place, you see. But it's very hard. It's not really hard to explain it. It's just that it keeps us separate in the mail, and it keeps us separate if there was somebody done wrong. And if somebody did right, then we'd know who to praise.
Right. Now, Mike, I understand that you're a bit of a poet.
Well, I put words together to the best of my ability, and I like to play with my native language.
You write all your poetry in the Gaelic?
I couldn't write in English, I'm afraid, because English is only my second language, but I write prose mostly, really. I have 2 books published in Gaelic. My third one is at a publisher. And
what would be the subject of those books?
Well, the subject of my first book was my life once I went to school. I was a year in London, and I was 10 years in Chicago.
10 years in Chicago, so you actually spent some time in America?
Oh, I did indeed. I spent 10 years there, and I was there at the time of the civil rights, and I wrote a bit about that in the book, in Gaelic.
Unfortunately, you can't look from the outside in to the question of Ireland, so what are your views? How do you see Ireland, speaking from the heart, perhaps?
Well, speaking from the heart, it's a very sad story. Very sad, for the simple reason I'm an Irishman. There's no difference between me and an Englishman or a Scotsman or a Frenchman. But the only thing that kills me is what is the cause of all the trouble. Because to me, I worked over in America with Protestants, Catholics, atheists, and some people tell me about the North that God Almighty is the Catholic Church or it's the Protestant Church. Or this or that. I cannot believe that, because I work with people of all religions, and they did never express to me what their religion was or what it meant, because religion is a private thing, number one. I think myself it's a grab for power, wherever that comes from.
You obviously feel very deeply, as perhaps all Celts do, and yet your writings, you say, are rather light-hearted. How do you explain this?
I always try to keep the bright side out, because down through the years, we were suppressed. And the only reason that we kept our language was we kept the bright side out. We let nobody know what we were suffering inside.
Mike, I think that's a good lesson. Ihawa.
Finally from Ireland for today, a snatch from the end of a very long song sung in a bar by Patrick O'Connor, who, despite his advancing years, afterwards proceeded to dance a hornpipe.
Mati can vi kille bargeris tiskint ekkur skamlar ma gwinnen gwihe vi donal taggart say shinkel scratche servilin jeg och tjänsten tide ach ni nim doch nafish mar vi han khir gele barra.
Thanks very much for singing that, but was that a bit naughty, that song?
No way.
Can you tell me why everybody was laughing?
Bit of fun song, like, you know.
Can you tell me what it was about, then?
An old man sang this about his neighbours, like, the way they were getting on in life, you know.
And how were the neighbours getting on in life?
Very good. Some of them bad and more of them good, like,
yes.
You know.
Well,
there's nothing naughty. There was not one even word.
Good. Well, I hope you're getting on very well in life, and thanks very much for singing for us.
In St.Ives, the fifth Alma Arta, Julia Allard, a hira dreze hui nebis divinuero de worth and go pan Celtic, a martesan hisidianzo in Kevin Lay. Next week, Julia Allard will be back presenting Kroeder Kroghen with some more extracts from Killarney and perhaps some of her personal recollections. Our Tuas and Days Liver, and to finish the diary. Genza, first. The Kesgazulians Kerno, the conference on Cornwall, which started yesterday, will shortly be restarting at the Pontsmere Hotel Perranporth. Today's business is largely concerned with reports from a whole range of working parties set up to examine many facets and problems of Cornwall's life and identity. In review, Rex Duviorian Kernewek and Kernewek, if it conteles dre cumnius Micah Brenda Carn Igachi. Also today for the Cornish classes in South East Cornwall, there is a gathering this afternoon at Deviac Farm, Cardinham, courtesy of Mike and Brenda Carn, starting at 3 p.m. You can get details from me if you ring about midday on Liscard 45152. Hairdresser. And finally, a meeting will be held for Cornish speakers to discuss the situation of unified Cornish. And Gontelas Marvis Singis de Sadorn and St.Ives Wonigans of Ismay, Henun Sadorn and there. And Gwisti Fungens Real Colonel in Truro, or Talis the Deer Hunter Dorjes. Tis of impedure gans and deafness to Kernewek Unis, you go with the doors. Halemen, Digenachui bis in Nessa Tro. Bye until the next time.